let's take a look at our top selections for
Hi everybody, Mike Beer here, taking a look at the first of two stakes races on the Saturday card down at Gulfstream Park. Race number 9 is the Via Borghese for older fillies and mares. They're going to go 1 mile and 3/16 on the turf course for a $100,000 purse. Let's take a look at the field. 9 horses entered into this race. Some very well-connected fillies as well coming into this race in pretty good form. You have 3 horses in here dropping out of graded stakes races recently, where they all 3 of them finished second in those respective graded stakes races. I thought they all ran very well. The 2 traipsing just came up short after cutting the pace in the grade 3 Long Island at Aqueduct. The number 3 Court Return finished very fast at a bid price and just came up short in the grade 1 EP Taylor at Woodbine. And number 8, your money line favorite, Always Shopping for trainer Todd Pletcher, engaged in a very game stretch duel and came up just short in her own right in the grade 3 Dowager at Keeneland the last time we saw her. All 3 of these horses come into this race in good form. You also have a horse trained by Chad Brown, very lightly raised filly on the outside in number 9 Great Island, who has won both of her starts so far this year. She feels like she's just getting started in her career. So we'll see how it all plays out. All 4 of those fillies that I just mentioned, they are the 4 shortest prices on the morning line. They're coming into this race in good form though, and I think it makes for a very interesting matchup. Let's take a look at the Time Form US Pace Projector first, just to get an idea of how they see the race being run. They have Always Shopping, the 8 out there on the early lead. I guess that's possible. I sort of felt like maybe you would see the 2 traipsing out there cutting the pace this time. She's drawn more towards the inside. Her last 2 races up in New York, they've used her speed. She's run very well in those races. Now, she is a filly who's run very well from off the pace in her career as well, so she is not a horse. I don't think you should look at her as a horse who has to be out there cutting the pace to be effective, because I don't think that's the case with her at all. But it's been her run style recently. There's not a lot of speed in this race. I can certainly see her going forward. We'll see where the 9 Great Island winds up. She has been forward and tractable in her last 2 starts, both of them victories in Kentucky. They have her forward in this race. I suspect that her rider will try to, come out of there running a little bit and then perhaps land a spot maybe over towards the inside, somewhere just off the pace in here. I doubt she'll be too far away early. We'll start with some of the contenders in the race before we get to the picks. I wanted to start with traipsing, just because, first of all, I was a little surprised when the morning line came out and they had her the 3rd choice at 7-2. Personally, I felt like traipsing would be the favorite in this race. I'm not so sure she doesn't deserve to be the favorite based off of her last couple of starts, again, up in New York. This is a filly who I've always been a fan of. I already sort of mentioned that she's been effective from off the pace in the past, and that was certainly the case in her first 2 races down here at Gulfstream Park earlier this year. She came back off of a very long layoff with a really good effort, I thought, considering how long she was away to clear her entry-level allowance condition. A fast finish in that race to close that thing down at a big price. I thought she looked good in that race, and she came back in her next start in the Treasure Chest and finished 6th here at Gulfstream Park going 1 mile and 8. She ran a lot better than it looks in that effort as well, as far as I'm concerned. That was a pretty solid pace. She was between horses for a long way, contesting it. Eventually, she weakened at the end to finish 6th as closers came and finished 1-2 in there. But she did a lot of hard work in that race, and I thought ran a lot better than it looks. So she's gotten back on turf in her last 2 starts. They've used her speed more effectively. Yeah, she fairly stole that allowance race 2 starts back at a pretty big price, 13-1. But she ran well that day, and she backed that race up, I thought, very, very strongly in the Long Island last time. Once again, controlling the pace, was still there in the very late stages. It just got run down by her talented stablemate, Muda Makina, to settle for 2nd. The only reason, or one of only 2 reasons, I guess, now that I don't have her on top is that, personally, I've been a fan of hers. I've liked her in each of her last 2 races. She was 13-1 and 26-1 in those races. So, I just didn't really feel like going back to her here at a shorter price. And again, I fully expect her to be the morning line favorite here. She's not. I still think there's a chance she will go favorite come post time, but that morning line's close to right, and she's the 3rd choice. I would certainly have her on top in this race, because I think in a lot of ways she's the horse to beat in here. The number 3 is Court Return. This is a 4-year-old filly who's come back in really, really good form this year as a 4-year-old, a much improved horse this year. Court Return has been won her first 2 races back from the layoff very impressively, big late runs into those races, and just ran the leaders right over both times. I thought her Canadian was fine. She was never a real threat in that when they bumped her up into that grade 2, a big price that day at 30-1. But she was racing on to the end to be a clear third without threatening the 1-2 finishes there. I thought she ran fine that day. She did have a pace to close into. And then she came back with this race. Let's take a look at her EP Taylor. This is her most recent start in the middle of October up there, a grade 1 race. Once again, she's back off the pace. This was a solid pace in the grade 1 EP Taylor, so she did have a setup in here. And you can see from the stretcher, it never really looked like she was going to catch the eventual winner there out on the early lead. That's the favorite at 12. But boy, did she come fast at the end of this race, and to make it actually very close, a lot closer than it looked like it might be in mid-stretch. Another good performance for Court Return. This is a new top buyer for her, a 91 in this race. Once again, a huge price in there, 41-1. She will not be that big a price this time. But her form is actually very solid. We'll see what kind of trip she gets to, because she is a horse who wants to sit it out and make one run. And this race may not set up great for her, but she's very much improved as a 4-year-old. She gets Louis Saez for this. There are things to like about her. And she is not going to be close to the favorite in this race. So I can see using that horse somewhere. The 5 I thought was a little interesting, Kelsey's Cross. I would like her more if not for those races 2 and 3 starts back where she was defeated at short prices both times. That concerned me about her. I thought she ran fine last time when she finished behind Always Shopping in the Monroe, if only because I just didn't really care for the trip or ride that she got in that race. They took her back to last early, but for whatever reason never took her over to save any ground at all. She wound up wide around both turns. Never looked like she was going to win, but she was racing on pretty gamely to the end of that race to get third. I'm a fan of hers. I think she's a little bit underrated. She will need her very best effort to contend in here, and she'll need to get a better trip than she got last time. I have no problem with the rider change for Kelsey's Cross in here, and she's going to be a good price in this race. She's interesting. I didn't care for the 6 that much either. That's Cambeliza. Her most recent start, I suppose you might just want to give her a pass for the Zagora. It seems like the yielding turf that she caught at Belmont Park last time did not work for her at all. She never picked up her feet and was, just left far, far behind in there. Prior to that, she was certainly trending the right way. She's a very lightly raced 4-year-old for a very good trainer. She certainly has a right to take another step forward here. We'll see if she can do it. I thought she would have to do that in order to contend in this race. The 2 horses drawn to the outside are the 2 morning line favorites. The number 9, Great Island, is that Chad Brown lightly raced filly here. Very nice pedigree on this filly by Scat Daddy. Ran fine in her only start last year as a 3-year-old, second best only to Mean Mary, who is obviously a very talented horse. She ran fine that day. It felt like a useful effort, and she's come back after a bit of a layoff there to go 2 for 2 now as a 4-year-old in Kentucky. I don't feel like she was beating the strongest fields in the world in either of those races. She certainly looked okay winning them. And she has shown improved tactical speed in her 2 races this year. We'll see what happens. I personally didn't want necessarily a short price on this horse, and even if the morning line isn't right and she's not going to be, sort of that, close second choice in this race, I don't think she will be that short. You never really get value with these Chad Brown horses, especially lightly raced ones like this. She could improve. I think she has to. I didn't really want her in this race. Always Shopping is your morning line favorite, number 8. We talked about that Monroe a little bit earlier when we were talking about Kelsey's Cross, but let's look at the replay of that right now, because this filly ran pretty well in there, I thought. Got forward position coming out of the gate, and this was her first start with blinkers, by the way, as they switched over to turf for this race. And I thought she ran well. They settled off the pace in a pretty good trip. She came with a 3-wide run around the turn. I just liked the way that she was closing this race out at the end. She's only going to win it by a neck, but it looked like a much more clear-cut victory than that to me. I felt like her rider, Edgar Zayas, had that thing measured at the end. I liked that performance from her. She came back in her next start, stretched out to 1.5 miles in the Dowager at Keeneland, ran really well that day. Sat right up on the pace there with a nice horse and Blame Debbie, and threw down in a really game stretch duel all the way down to the wire. Just could not get by that horse, but didn't give an inch to the stretch. I thought she ran really well in there. So I wound up putting her on top. We can put the picks up there now. I went 8, 2, 3, and 5. The 8 and the 2 were really the 2 horses I wanted most in here. And once again, I really only put Always Shopping on top because I felt like Traipsing would be the clear-cut favorite in here, and as someone who's liked her at prices recently, I didn't want to take a short price on her this time, but if that morning line's close to right, I would have no problem switching to having Traipsing on top. But they were really the 2 horses I wanted to focus on in this Via Borghese. There's sort of a lot going on, and I certainly didn't feel like the the favorites had to necessarily win this race or even run 1-2 in here. But they are, in a lot of ways, I think the two best horses and the two horses to beat in here. Again, 8, 2, 3, and 5 for me in the Via Borghese. It's race number 9 at Gulfstream on Saturday. Approximate post time 4:12 Eastern time. Good luck.